Welcome to the Toy Rewind Podcast with your hosts, the Brothers Newland. Now, let's talk toys.
Beep, 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 beep. Hey, everybody, I'm Michael.
I'm John.
And I'm Andrew. And this week, welcome to the Toy Rewind Podcast. This is just a place where the three of us like to get together and talk about toy lines or things from our childhood. Episode 110, not 1010. That's not right.
It is 110. I was thinking it was 110. It's 110. Awesome.
This is 110. And
Right.
this week
Not
we are
1010.
rewinding back to 1979 to get an amazing pixelated look at the Atari console, which is why Michael decided to start off our week with a little Pong.
How'd you get 1979 out of that? It goes further than that. It's
That's the
1972.
That's the 2600. 2600.
No, it's still older than that.
I got 79. That's what I saw. Let me look.
2600 came out in 1977. It's the same age as I am.
It says 79 on what I'm reading.
Yeah, see, there you go. So maybe whatever. We're going back to the 70s. We're talking about Atari, and we're going to talk about the Atari company, Atari Corporation Incorporated, Atari Games. They're known by 17 million different things because they can't keep their mind straight. But the important thing is we're talking about Atari, and for that, we have this. There it is. We're going to talk over this the whole time, just like we were in Marble Madness.
Is it loud enough for everybody to hear?
I'm going to turn it down
Yes.
just a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. So, yeah, it should be good.
All right. If it's just kind of like video game music is what's in
Yep.
the background. If you can't hear it, just in case.
It gets faster and faster, though.
It does. It gets faster and faster. And if you feel like you need to talk faster and faster, it's because you feel like you're about to roll off the course because this is, yeah.
All right.
That's how video games work.
So,
All right.
All right.
Before we get I'm lost. We were already talking about things. I'm already lost. John, do your thing.
Sorry, I was laughing when you said that was doing your beeping, Michael. Your video froze up too, just like the game.
oh, did it really?
Yeah, it did.
So
That was my Pong.
I could
My
hear you,
Pong
but
imitation
nothing
of
was.
what that was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did really good.
I know I don't have the best video anyway, so if you're watching the YouTube,
Just
I
like
know
you just froze up again.
my videos go.
Right.
So,
All right.
All right,
So
go ahead, John.
check our website over at toyrewindpodcast.com or over at crossthestreamsmedia.com. Leave us a voicemail if you go to Cross the Streams Media.
How do you do
we'd
that?
love to hear them. You go to the bottom and hit the little microphone deal, and you can leave the voicemail.
You know what we need to do?
Okay.
We need to ask somebody who leaves us voicemails all the time to record us a little thing to be like, hey, here's how you do it. I do it all the time. I'll get with Larry, see if he can record something for us.
it was Larry.
Yeah, that'd be
Their
great.
the latest episode of SDS Guys, he did mention us in our Guts episode too. So
Oh, yeah.
thanks,
Oh,
Larry.
cool.
Appreciate
I haven't heard that one yet.
Appreciate the shout out there. Yeah,
Yes,
we're
thank
still
you.
going. I know his list is dwindling of podcasts that he does at the end of the show. So, but we're still on there. So,
Oh, that's good. That's good. Somebody's still there.
Right.
all right, John, go
you
ahead.
can always
Sorry.
you can email us at toyrewindpodcast@gmail.com. Look us up on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. It's all Toy Rewind Pod. Facebook and YouTube is Toy Rewind Podcast. And of course, if you want to play a game, go to podcastbingo.com/Toy Rewind. Play a little bingo game while you listen to us, and let us know if you get anything or not.
Sorry. Yes. So that's all the good stuff. Sorry, the music keeps
Right.
getting a little louder. We're gonna go as long as we can with it. There's something else. I feel like there was something else.
Something
I don't know.
else?
We're just gonna roll. We're gonna roll with this. We're gonna rewind. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about some Atari because I feel like we've got a good episode here. So, Michael, you ready?
Yeah, let's go for it. Since we can't think of what else we're supposed to do next.
Yep. All right. Let's
let's go.
let's
That
rewind
was it.
and get into it. There we go.
Okay, all right. So, founded in 1972 by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney, Atari is largely responsible for the arcade games and video game consoles that we know now. You know, for the whole video game through the 70s, 80s, 90s. You know, they're the ones that kind of got everybody started on it and grew it, and then other companies and consoles came out and got bigger. But Atari is the kind of like the godfather of video games, put it that way. So the word Atari comes from the ancient Chinese board game Go, in which the name means "I'm about to win." It's similar to saying checkmate if you're in chess, playing chess. So that's it.
That's an Atari.
Yeah. Or I mean, it's like saying Uno when you've got the last Uno card, you know. So that's kind of what Atari means in the Chinese game. So
Interesting.
So Dabney had created a new technology called a spot motion circuit, which meant that programs didn't need an expensive computing unit, and allowed for the creation of a video game cabinets. So if you're looking at your arcade games, so his technology was able to make those smaller, where you can just put it in like a cabinet and you can play the game, and it didn't need this huge computer thing, because back then computers were pretty good size. You know, starting with 50s, 60s. If you ever seen one, they're huge. They're the size of a room, and then they started shrinking. You know, starting in the 60s, all this technology and stuff started getting better and better, and those started shrinking and getting smaller, and then it. You know, now we've got a million times more in our cell phones, you know. So anyway, so his technology was able to where you can make a video game and not need as much computing stuff that you need in there to do that. So, and you can just build a big cabinet around it and set it up there. And they were into getting into this where you use coin operated video games stuff, arcade games is what that is. So a newcomer to Atari in 1972 was Alan Alcorn. He was introduced to Dabney's game computer science, which that technology he used to make or computer space, sorry, is the name of the game. So they introduced Alan Alcorn to this game, and he was assigned a project as a test to see if he can make it better than what it was. So the project was finished. It took him a few months. He finally finished it, and it resulted in the game named Pong. So everybody knows Pong. Pong was like one of the very first games. So the game was originally not intended to be released publicly, but everybody who worked for Atari at that time enjoyed the game so much that it became their flagship title. So the fun fact about this, Atari didn't have the patent to Pong until the game had been released. So that allowed other companies that were getting into the video game type stuff like that to make a copy of it, to make their versions of it. And they had all kinds of different imitations and stuff like that. And then also Magnavox had a game called Tennis Table, which was similar to the way Pong worked, but it was a little bit different. But Magnavox accused Atari of ripping off their game, so they sued Atari. But Atari, they didn't want to do all the legal stuff, so they just settled out of court and said, okay, whatever. And then they went on to come up with more different games and stuff like that. So, but they did have a lot of Pong was put out there for to be put into bars and stuff like this, where people paid whatever was I don't know if it was a quarter back then, but the reason they didn't get as much as that was Atari wasn't set up to be able to send people out to collect the money, so they didn't make much money off of that. And the bar and the places that had it made more money than Atari did off of it. But that's what started the whole company there. So Atari set out to create new games, and during the first couple of years, Atari, they employed a couple other future computer big names. If you've heard of the guy named Steve Jobs and then Steve Wozniak. Those two guys. Yeah, Wozniak. I don't know. That just says two big names in computers. So, but they worked for Atari for like a year or two, and then they went on to do their own thing. So, but during that time they were there, they came up with games such as Breakout, Space Race, Tank, and then Gotcha. Those are some of the names that came out during the first couple of years. So by 1974, Atari was beginning to spread kind of too thin with its international expansion. They started going international, and then they placed too much faith in an arcade game named Grand Track 10. So they were starting to spread themselves kind of thin. But then they had the games like Tank and these others. It kind of kept them afloat just enough to keep on going. So in 1976, Atari was actually purchased by Warner Communications for $28 million. So that really put a lot of money into the company there, having a big corporation behind them like that. So up to this point, Atari was mostly, like I said, coin-operated arcade games, but did release a home version of Pong for the 1975 Christmas season that was exclusively you can only buy it through Sears. That's the only place you could find it. They didn't sell much of them, but they did. They sold a little bit of them. And then it kind of got the name out there into the households where you have a game console at home. The only problem was you paid a lot of money for it, and it only had Pong. So I know back then Pong was exciting. Now if you have it now, it's compared to all these other games, it's really boring. So, but it was kind of exciting for them back then. I think I know where you're talking about the 2600, where you're seeing a later date on that. Because in 1977, a year after Warner Communications took over Atari, the Atari VCS was released, which is the Atari Video Computer System. It is also the same thing as the Atari 2600. But they just called it the VCS before they added that number, the 2600, to it. So I think that's why you didn't see it from 77. You saw it only in 79 because they later named it that. So this system took a while to catch on because earlier game systems such as Pong, like I just said, was just one game for a high price. But then when people caught on that the Atari VCS had a new technology to be able to switch out games with other games, the system started catching on. So they came up with the idea of doing the cartridge for each game, and you could just plug it in, play a game, and you pull it out, you put another game in there, you play something completely different. So this was the Atari VCS was $199 at the time, and the system included a console, 2 joysticks, 2 paddles, and the game Combat. So I don't know if you two remember playing Combat when we had our Atari, but played it quite a bit.
I remember Combat, but only because I've seen some videos and like remember the play. Like actually playing
we
that,
have the tanks we would roll all over the place and shoot each other, and then we'd get angry because somebody kept coming up behind us and shooting us. So and spinning us across the screen.
Andrew.
So how much, Andrew? Real quick. Before John says that, can you look up see how much $199 is in today's money?
That was what year?
What I was going to ask.
That was 1977. $199 in 1977. What is it today?
Let's see. 2023, $199.
So a bunch of money.
Whew. Care to take a guess?
How much was $1,200?
A little south of that. You're looking at $974.63.
So just under $1,000 for for this Atari system. Yeah. And when it first came out, there was I don't remember how many games it said it had, but it had 9 games. I can't remember that they had ready for it when they put it out. So. And it was just Atari only games. Later on, they came out with other games by other manufacturers. I think they had later on it was Activision and Nintendo actually had a few games in there that they got for the Atari system and stuff like that in the early '80s before Nintendo actually came out with their own game, the Nintendo Entertainment System. So. But a couple of things. Just as soon as the Atari 2600 started to ship, they started development on the successor of it because it was thought that the 2600 only had like a 3-year lifespan. So by the time 3 years was up, people were ready for something else, and something bigger and better is what they were thinking. So. But midway during the development of the next Atari system, the home computer revolution started to take off. You started seeing more computers like the Apple or in the Commodore, stuff like that, started hitting. This led to the addition of a keyboard and features to produce the Atari 800, and then there was a smaller version of the Atari 400, which had a keyboard, and I never really saw what they didn't sell very many of these, so I don't know what what all those entailed as far as I don't know if they were just smaller computers with the video games or what, but there was a keyboard and some other things with it. Like I said, these two came out, the 800 and the 400 came out in 1980, but it didn't have the success as the 2600. They sold very few of them. But from that platform, the Atari released the 5200. This console had no success at all due to the incompatibility with the 2600 games. So you couldn't play the older games with this new system, and they only had a few games dedicated to this system. And it also, the controllers weren't very reliable on the 5200, so it did not have success either. So still, the 2600 is still, up to this point, is still the best Atari that they had out. So during this time of failed successors, the 2600 just kept plugging along. They kept putting it out there a little bit, and then it sold millions of units. Atari accounted for a third of Warner's annual income and was the fastest growing company in the U.S. history at that time in the early 80s.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, but faced with fierce competition and price wars in the game console, because there was a lot of smaller handheld stuff, like little football games and baseball and different kind of little handheld things as well. The home, let's see, I lost my note where I was at. I'm sorry. So the home computer, then the home computer markets were growing as well. Atari was never able to duplicate the success of the 2600, and then what followed after that? By 1983, we saw the crash, video game crash, and that was mostly due to Atari trying to get new games out for their 2600 and these other consoles that weren't successful. With the success of the 2600, they kept putting new games out for it, and they weren't quality games. So people started losing interest in these games because they weren't good. We know even when they put Pac-Man out for the 2600, it wasn't the same as the arcade Pac-Man. The game, they had glitches in the game. Some of the stuff, the way the layout was different. We know about the ET video game, which I actually loved playing. I thought it was the most difficult game ever because you'd fall in a pit and you could never get out. But for some reason, I loved playing that game. And Rainey actually has a copy of it in her ET room. So, but it's people thought it was pretty much say it's the worst game ever. But I do remember playing some of these awful games. Even the Superman game wasn't that great. I remember trying to play it. But so they lost confidence in it, and so they just quit buying it. It was just the whole industry just nosedived in 1983. So that's the we talked about that in the Nintendo episode we had about that crash, and then what Nintendo did when it came into the market, what they had to do to get their video games into the entertainment system, into the market to get it going. So they had to use Teddy Ruxpin to do that. But anyway, listen to that episode if you want to hear all that. So struggling after the crash, Warner Communications started looking for a buyer for Atari, and they restructured the company to create NATCO, which stood for New Atari Company, which streamlined the company's facilities, personnel, and spendings. At this time, a lot of the guys from Atari, from the beginning of Atari, they were already bailing ship, leaving, all this kind of stuff, doing other things. They had a whole different kind of culture working at Atari, and there's several documentaries, whatever you call them, out there that you can watch. That kind of talks about that. But there's so they streamlined all that kind of stuff, and then in 1984, NATCO was sold to Jack Trammell, who was the guy who actually founded Commodore International. The Commodore computers is what he did. And then Warner actually gained 20% stake in Trammell Technologies, which was renamed after they purchased Atari to Atari Corporation. So it was only called NATCO for a year, I think. So Warner did retain the arcade division and named it Atari Games, but eventually sold it to Namco in 1985. So they didn't even keep that for a year before they sold it to somebody else. So under Trammell's ownership, Atari Corp finished development on a 1632-bit computer system, the Atari ST. ST stands for 1632, which had 16-bit bus and 32-bit processor core. I don't know much about that. Andrew may know more about that than I do. And those listening to us may know, the computer guys. But in 1985, several updates of the 8-bit computer line started to hit with the Atari 65XE and Atari 130XE. A lot of this under Trammell actually kind of geared towards the home computer type stuff. It wasn't much of video game consoles. So that was kind of what he was known for. He knew more about was computers, and that's kind of way it kind of leaned that way with the new Atari stuff. So in 1986, Atari launched two consoles that were originally designed under Warner, back when they were still under Warner Communications. They had the Atari 2600 Junior, I think, which was just a kind of a smaller version of the 2600, and then the Atari 7800, which could actually play the original Atari. It could retro play, whatever that's called, where you could play the older games.
Where it's backwards compatible.
Yeah, backwards compatible. That's it. Yeah, so it could do that. So the 7800 was useful for that. So in 1987, Atari acquired Federated Group, which was a chain of consumer electronic retail stores. Like I said, with the Nintendo Entertainment System, how they had to get in there, get in the door, get their foot in the door, all that kind of stuff. They did what they had to do with that. Atari, because of the crash, nobody wanted it anymore. Nobody had any faith in it, and say, hey, video games consoles we're not putting out in the market. We don't want to sell it anymore. We're just getting hung with it. We don't want to buy them, buy to sell. So what they did, what Atari did, was they bought their own line of chain of stores. So if they own the store, they can get the product out to the public. So that's what they did. So they used that to kind of gain ground back up for what they lost from the crash. So this retail store chain had 67 stores in California, Arizona, Texas, and Kansas, which secured shelf space for the consoles. Because of the time, other major American electronic outlets were reluctant to carry Atari branded computers. And then 2/3 of Atari's PC production was actually sold in Europe. So here in the U.S., they didn't. It wasn't nobody wanted them here in the U.S.
So they went to Europe.
Yeah. So in 1988, Atari unveiled the 1040 STF and Mega ST computers. Again, those are computer-based things. 1989. So they jumped back in trying to get the video consoles. 89 was big for the Game Boy, so you had handheld stuff. So Atari released the Atari Lynx, which was a handheld console with color graphics. But they had some issues, kind of like now. They had a shortage of parts that kept the system from being released nationwide for the 1989 Christmas season. And the Lynx lost market share to the Game Boy, which was cheaper, had better battery life, and was the only problem between the difference was the Game Boy was black and white, not color. But with being cheaper and more availability, everybody started picking up the Game Boy. So the Lynx just it never hit like they hoped it would. Let's see. So we skipped to 1993. They try one more time. Let's say one more time for Atari. So they saw. So the newest Atari game system called the Jaguar. It hit the market in 1983 as the only 64-bit interactive media entertainment system available. But again, this system had poor sales and would be the last home console to be produced by Atari and the last to be produced by an American manufacturer until Microsoft's introduction of the Xbox in 2001. Yep. So they had these great ideas. They were the first home console really to be put out with the 2600. They tried the Lynx, which was a handheld, which was supposed to be better than the Game Boy, but they had issues. They couldn't get it out there, so it failed. And then they put the Jaguar out, and then for some reason the Jaguar didn't hit, and I never played it, so I don't know the issues and stuff it had. But like I said, at the time it was the only 64-bit console out there. It was the first one out there, but it had issues. From what I can remember, that did have some issues, but like I said, I never played it, so I couldn't tell you the exact issues. So they had a lot of stuff rolling that could have gone their way, and it just never did. So by 1996, with the failure of the Lynx and the Jaguar, Atari did not have a product to sell, and then the name just largely disappeared from the market. I know you saw there's every so often there would be another arcade game, which by then the arcade games and stuff were kind of fading. They weren't as big in the 90s as they were in the 80s and 70s and 80s. So, and then Nintendo came in and kind of swept everything up for that time period. One more thing about, so like I said, in 1982, the Atari 2600 was the dominant game system in North America. It had quite a bit of competition from some other companies. So when I'm trying to read what I got here, so just one more note was that Nintendo helped lead the recovery of the industry with the 1985 launch of the Nintendo Entertainment System. So this is what I'm trying to get to. Production of the Atari 2600 ended on January 1st, 1992, with an estimated 30 million units sold across its lifetime. So this was one of the most successful. It's the only successful thing Atari ever had, really. But yeah, it started in 1977 and never ran out of production until January 1st, 1992.
That's just amazing to me, because when Nintendo came out in 85, and I know it hit pretty strong in the later 80s, you know, 88 or whatever, but for Atari to continue making 2600s all the way through 92, I just assumed they had stopped making them.
No, they were still being manufactured. So
that's pretty crazy.
So yeah, it was released in September 1977 and ran all the way to the 1st of January 1992. I'm trying to read.
Okay, so
go ahead, Andrew. Oh, here you go.
They went through 91, basically, not through 92. Just correct myself.
Yeah. I mean, the 1st of January. Yeah.
But they were making 2600s and actually manufacturing 2600s after the Super Nintendo was released.
Yeah.
So that's crazy to me.
Real quick on the timeline as well, I'm looking at. In 1990, the final game for Atari that was made was Clax. Was the final game that was made for Atari. Clax. No, so they even made the games up till 1990 for the 2600. So, let's see. One other thing, the VCS model, the very first one, it had a couple of extra, let's see, a couple of extra little toggle switches, which I don't know what they were. I don't have a good picture of it to exactly see what it is. But then from the 80 till the end of its lifespan, it only had 4 instead of 6 toggle switches. So I don't remember. I thought ours had the 6, but I can't remember off the top of my head because we had one of them earlier. So
Go
ahead, John.
No, I was going to say we'll go off your memory on that one because I don't remember much about it.
Do either of you know what the highest selling or the most sold Atari game is?
Pac-Man was.
It was Pac-Man.
Even though it had issues, Pac-Man was the highest selling, and most of that was because it came with, when it first came out, they had Combat sold with it, and then was it 80 or 81 they started selling it with Pac-Man included with the game. It's kind of like Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, for Nintendo.
Was Pac-Man the one that they buried all the extra games that they couldn't sell?
No, that was supposed to be an ET, but
was that ET?
If you watch the what's the name of that documentary? I don't know.
It's ET. It's like Game Over. Game Over.
I know I'm saying that wrong. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it's Atari Game Over.
Documentary. I don't know why I say
documentary.
Yeah, documentary.
Just say it fast.
Okay, I know everybody's laughing at me. Everybody's laughing at me listening to this. Why can't that idiot say that right?
Documentary.
I'm gonna get with all your people you work with and have them say it to you all the time at work. Pac-Man sold 8,095,586. Right. Just to compare that with the highest selling NES game, care to take a guess at what it was?
What was the question again? What did you say?
Highest selling NES game.
Mario.
Super Mario Brothers 3.
No, so Super Mario Brothers, the original.
Okay, the original. I was trying to. I thought that would be too easy, but okay.
Super Mario Brothers sold 40,240,000 copies. So you're looking at quadrupling at plus the sales of what Nintendo was doing over Atari, even though Atari was the most successful thing that Atari, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
If they would have added a few more bits, maybe they would have sold some more. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the list at 2.7 million units sold that one.
So it sold. Wow, it sold quite a bit more than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it outsold Miss Pac-Man. I mean, even for a game that you fall in a hole and you can't get out of the hole, there's a lot of people playing it. And it's Pitfall is the only non-arcade port that beat E.T. because E.T. was not an arcade port. So it's the only other one that was not an arcade port that beat E.T. And Pitfall sold 4 million copies. I mean, and that was the
Pitfall
highest.
Was a big, it was a big game for that system. Yeah.
Donkey Kong sold more than Pitfall at 4.8 or 4.1 million, and then Space Invaders comes in second at 6.2.
All those are actually arcade games.
Yeah, so those are arcade games. People are buying those because they love playing the games. In the arcade, you get them, you go home, you play them. Pitfall, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Demon Attack, Adventure. Those are games that weren't those arcade ports, so people were taking a risk.
Adventure is probably my favorite. I know Mom always said that was her favorite as well, but I really enjoyed playing Adventure. So, and it's just this pixelated looking stick figure that goes around fighting pixelated dragons in a single colored background with a different colored pixelated wall that you walk between, that you keeps you in the screen. It's kind of completely different from what we talk about the new Zelda game will ago.
I mean, I bet Zelda has a hidden wall that you can walk through somewhere though. So
probably, yeah.
We all know that came from Adventure. And it's, you go, you find a little pixelated rock. That's what it is. Another one on this list, because I was just looking through this list of the top 20. These are the top 25 best-selling ones. At number 24 is Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's from 1982.
Yeah.
I don't remember this game. Obviously, I mean, it's older than me. I don't remember this game, but I just trying to think about how you would play Raiders of the Lost Ark on an Atari. I remember the Temple of Doom game on Nintendo, but I don't remember this one. I'm gonna have to look that one up. Also, just a couple ahead of that one, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, released in '82. Seems like that one would be pretty self-explanatory. You just kind of fly around in space and shoot at things.
Yeah,
like maybe
I
other
guess.
X-wings.
What
game do you remember?
It may be. It could be one where I know there was a game similar to, where he's riding in that trench on the Death Star, and it zeroes into the shooting into the hole with the bullseye. The what do you call it that sits in front of you there? I know there's a game that's similar to that as well. I can't remember the name of that one. Which one that one is?
What game do you remember playing the most, Michael?
E.T. We played Asteroids quite a bit. Space Invaders. Space Invaders probably the most, I think. I'm looking over a list of names here that I remember. So there was Adventure. We had. Is that the Outlaw game? There's an Outlaw game that we played.
John, what do you think?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
This is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I've got it playing. I just pulled the same thing up.
I don't even know what's going on here.
I've got the video going, and it's kind of disturbing.
What are you? Which character? Which one are you? And like the character at the bottom looks like maybe, I don't know. Are they detached heads? Is that what's going on here?
So no, okay.
I do remember the little squiggly line up there that you're looking at is a snake, I think.
Okay,
well, the guy that has the little cowboy hat right here.
They what?
Uh-huh.
I don't see a
guy
cowboy
hat. The little lamp with the cowboy hat.
The hats look the same.
The lamp with the cowboy hat.
You're not the dudes with the eyeballs.
What are those?
I don't know.
Oh, that's the character? Is that
the lamp with the cowboy hat looking thing is Indiana Jones.
The character.
This
and the video I'm
right
playing
here.
over.
There you go. That's you're highlighting now is Indiana
That's the
Jones.
character. That's who
so
you
what
are.
What is this? What is this? I thought this was the character. It looks like a face wrapped in a turban. Like, he wraps up when he's in the desert. That's a snake.
Sure.
What is this? And is this not just a big dirt road?
I don't know.
And these are hieroglyphs. I don't.
No, that's what you have down here. That's your whip, your gun. You have a key, and whatever else that other one was.
Yeah, a bomb, a grenade.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
I will give them that most of their covers are pretty good. I like the covers of the video games.
The artwork that they put into these looks great on the cover of the boxes that the cartridges came in, and the little sticker on the front of the cartridge. If you look at that, there's actually some pretty good artwork on all of those. So, and it's
all right. Let's talk about ET.
Okay.
I'm going to give Michael some nightmares. Let's talk about ET. Stuck in the pit.
Oh, you fell in the pit. You're going to die in the pit.
So this game, you could stretch your neck out.
Uh-huh.
And I don't really know what you did in this game.
Floated.
Well, I get that you floated, but I don't. What was the? I just don't know what the whole thing.
You had to gather pieces to make the phone home, and when you put the phone together, your spaceship would come and pick you up, and that was the end of the game. But the hard part was if you got too close to one of the pits, you would fall in, and then it's almost impossible to get out of the pit, and so you end up dying inside the pit.
Okay, so this is where this is your spaceship.
That's your spaceship. I think that's the beginning when it drops you off and takes off.
With
when you build your little phone,
points,
you call home, you phone home, and then you go back to this screen, and it comes down and picks you up. So,
okay,
yeah. But the way the ET character, when he's walking around those pits, you don't even have to get close to it, and you still fall in. So it's
probably the best part of the whole game. His sharp, his heart, his heart-faced face, his heart-shaped face.
So, Andrew, you were talking about the 9999.
Yeah,
that's how many steps you have to get it done.
Yeah. So that number counts down, and when it gets to 0, you lose.
Right.
What?
That's the amount of steps. I'm sitting here watching it, and it's counting down. Every step, it counts down.
Yeah.
What? Could you imagine if they counted steps in like Legend of Zelda, like any of the Legend of Zelda games? We'd be in so much trouble. Okay, what's another good Atari game like that you guys remember? We were talking about it.
Go to I think Tank. Is that the one I'm thinking of that had the or Combat? Is it Combat?
Oh, Combat.
Combat is the one you're thinking about.
Yeah, Combat, because you had the tanks, and you also had one where you had the airplanes that would fly and you'd shoot each other. But that was another one we played quite a bit, because you had a tank on you just like 2-player. You had a tank on each side, and then you would shoot, but you can actually shoot the walls and deteriorate the walls like you do in Space Invaders. And then you would try to shoot the other opponent, and when you hit him, he would spin out of control, and then when he stopped, he's facing a completely different direction. And while he's trying to turn around to get back to you, you're right there on him again, shooting him again, and he spins back around, and you keep spinning because, there you go. Yeah, that's the gameplay there.
I was trying to get that one up, yeah.
But yeah, that's one we played quite a bit. They had different levels where, this one we're looking at now has no walls, and then you get into one where you have a bunch of walls. But when you shoot the bullets, sometimes I guess it doesn't really eat the walls. It bounces off the walls and it ricochets. Yeah. That's what it does. So, but yeah, when you hit it, sometimes it would shoot you right through the wall to the next side, and then the
same as it just did right there.
Yeah, there you go. And it's very frustrating if you can't turn around quick enough to shoot the other guy, because he keeps shooting you and you can't, and you end up losing. So, but the same thing, it has airplanes, and you go around the clouds similar to the walls on this. But I thought you actually shot through the walls.
Yeah, there's some airplanes right there. Yeah, with clouds, so you can hide behind the clouds in this one.
Yeah. But it's the same thing. You shoot each other. Another game we played a lot of was Asteroids.
Asteroids, yeah.
Which you had a spaceship, and you had one little spot, and you would shoot the asteroids and the other UFOs that went across. But just as soon as you would move just enough, it would catch you, and you start drifting off, and then you're just pretty much screwed when you're drifting, because then you're trying, and then you start getting faster and faster, and you got all these asteroids coming at you, and you're trying to shoot them before they hit you. And it's crazy. So,
I was just
there's some great games back then.
I'm not really sure.
You think games are hard now? You go back and play those games. You can see how hard and frustrating they can be.
Another one that I don't remember, Marble Madness, which happens to be the music that we're listening to right now. I don't know what's going on the screen, but this is supposed to be Marble Madness. Maybe this
I remember the name, but I don't remember playing it.
So based off of the Atari stuff, I remember it, but I don't remember it on, or not the Atari, the arcade console. It looks very familiar, but I don't remember playing on Atari. But
Yeah.
So
So
very
the
interesting.
the original the original 9 games that were launched in 1977 with it, there was Air Sea Battle, Basic Math, aka Fun with Numbers. You had Blackjack, which we had Blackjack. I do remember playing that. We had Combat. That's another one. Indy 500 was out. Starship was an outer space game. You had Street Racer. Then you had Surround, which this says it's kind of like a chase game. So I guess you chase somebody around. And then you have Video Olympics, which was listed as Pong Sports. So it had different kind of looks like hockey and
So
basketball.
You played table tennis
and
or tennis?
Some tennis, and yeah, so there's some other things in there. But yeah, those are the original 9. There was 9 games that came out with it when it was released. So
Interesting.
I don't know. I've been watching this and I don't know what it is, Andrew.
You're a marble and you're rolling on platforms. The gray is the platform, right? And it has drop offs. So every time it disappears, it's falling off the edge.
Okay.
It's
so the
hard to
dark brown
tell in
is
this.
you don't want to fall into the dark brown spots or the crevices. Kind of like Cubert looks like.
Kinda.
Yeah.
Here, if
Like
you
a primitive version of Cubert. Yeah, that's kind of. I don't know. It looks like it's kind of hard. You can't tell what's what.
You got to go down the little center spot here, I guess.
you look at this, John, this will make more sense to you. This was the Atari, or not the Atari.
Right.
This was the.
No, I get that.
Yeah, but this helps to make more sense as to what you're watching, because you get the idea that there's a platform you're supposed to be on, and then you fall off. So, I just don't remember the Atari part of it. I remember the console, the arcade console.
The arcade console.
Yeah, the big wooden box.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we do have. We could talk about any of these. Any of these other games. Kaboom, Freeway, Laser Blast, Breakout, Warlord, Centipede. Lots of great stuff. But we do also have our segments back with Larry.
Good.
Say it a little louder, John. Give me a good one.
Said
That needs to be the.
have it.
Yeah, there we go.
Not as good as the first one I did.
We need to. I need to find that one and record that one, John. So, what do you guys think? You think Larry had
An Atari?
Did he have an Atari?
Do you think he had one?
Is he old enough to have one, or did he start out with Nintendo? I don't know. Let's listen to him. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah, let's see.
Hey, it's Larry. What's going on, guys? It's been a minute.
Hey, Larry.
This is a good one, though. The last couple episodes, I don't even remember those toys at all. But Atari, dude, of course, I had an Atari. I think I even got like an Atari 2600 for Christmas one year. I vaguely remember that, like Christmas present from my grandma. Shout out to my grandma. But yeah, tons of great memories of playing Atari, like with my dad and stuff. A couple of my favorite games that I remember: Pitfall, River Raid, Kaboom. Those old Activision games. Those are the ones that stand out to me the most, man. Activision made some great games, and I'm sure you guys talked about it. But that ET game, yeah, totally had that one too.
Larry, thanks for sending that in. That's great.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, most of the better games that were out there were the Activision games. They were the best ones. The graphics and stuff were a lot better with those than the original Atari made games.
Is that because they were just dealing with the games, not having to worry about the console?
Probably so. Yeah.
Because I feel like, I mean, Nintendo, Xbox, Microsoft, whatever. I know they're all making great games now, but for the companies that are making the games for the systems and not having to deal with anything with the system, do you think?
Mhm.
And I guess maybe it's a little different now because you have multiple teams and things. So you've got a team that's just working on the system and stuff like that. Whereas
Yeah.
back then, they were doing all of it. So
Right.
Yeah.
I just
And
wonder
I mean-
if that played into any of it.
Nowadays, you do have those companies that just make the games and
Yeah.
then put it out there for the systems. Like back then, Activision was one. Nintendo did that for a little while too, making some of these Atari games are Nintendo made games, but they did have arcade games as well. But yeah, you have like I don't know if it's Xbox or whatever that owns that are part of the company now, but Bethesda is a company that just for a while just made games. I think, if I'm right, I could be wrong, but companies like that just concentrate on the game and not the console or anything else, dealing with having to put it out there for the public and stuff like that. Just all they had to do is just make a game and sell it to these companies to put in their to play on their consoles. They seem to make the better game because that's what they're concentrating on. It's just that game. So like
Just
Activision and stuff like that. Companies.
I
like
wonder, our buddy Nate from what used to be the Dorksman podcast, does video game stuff. I wonder what his thought is on, Atari and their games compared to Activision back then. I might have to message him and see what he thinks about that.
Yeah, 'cause I think he was or still is part of EA Games. I think he
did some stuff on FIFA.
He had something to do with them.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still with them or does that or not. He's still in the video game business, I think, but I don't know if he still does that or not. So
Yeah. So one of these days, maybe we'll have him on when we talk about, one of the new video game consoles that we don't know anything about because, if it's not Nintendo, we don't care. That's just the way we are. We've always been a Nintendo family.
Yeah,
All right, what else?
I just realized I didn't have my lights on, so I was dark on this video.
Well, I don't know. You keep zooming in on your nose and stuff, so I don't know.
Well, that's I don't know what the camera's doing there. But yeah.
What else we got about Atari? I mean, I don't necessarily remember. I remember playing it. I don't really. I know that I did play it. I just don't remember, any fond memories or anything about the Atari. It was kind of there.
I loved playing Atari. And we had our select few of games that we played. I had a buddy of mine that when I went over to visit him, I think he had almost every Atari game that was put out, released. So we'd go in to his little game room and we'd look under the TV. There was Atari, and then there was this whole cabinet full of just the games. So we would just kind of randomly pick a game and we'd play it. So that was always fun. So, but yeah, I that's one of my. I mean, that's what I grew up with more than Nintendo. But you guys, I know you two guys spent more time with Nintendo than I did. So,
well, I mean, let's look at you're super old. The other two of us John's like middle old, and I'm like the youngest. I'm just a baby.
You're young old. Yeah, you're just young old.
I'm just a baby, so that's how it works. I just remember playing it or having it. I don't really necessarily remember anything that we did. I do remember combat a little bit, but like I said, that's only from seeing videos and being like, oh, I kind of remember that game, So,
and the paddle, talk about you had the joysticks, the paddles. I know I didn't say anything about those paddles, but all it was you hold it and it had a knob and it would go back and forth.
Yeah,
it wasn't really it wasn't like a paddle, but yeah.
Let's rank these. Let's put this on our list. The Atari 2600. I assume. I mean, that's basically what we're rating here.
Yeah, we're just gonna rank the 2600. Yes.
Basically, it's the 2600. I mean, it's kind of all of Atari, but it's basically just the 2600. That's what everybody. That's what everybody remembers.
I wanted to rank the Jaguar.
You want to rank the Jaguar, so it's last on your list. Under Mango.
I don't know. I noticed the last two they put out were like cat names. You had Lynx and you had Jaguar, so I don't know.
All right, so
Fair.
Michael.
That's gonna be number one for me. Number one.
Shocker.
We figured that.
John, what do you got?
I'm gonna go number 2.
Number 2 for you, and that's only because you're obsessed with Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. You did say you are enjoying your Beetlejuice toys that you've gotten and stuff.
Yeah, still they're like little things I grab now. So
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So we'll support that. This is going to be number 1 for me. Also, like I said, I remember it. I remember playing just parts of it, and I've played an Atari since. Like not a lot, but I've played some since. So
we have and if I had more time, I'd play a little bit more of it. We have one of the new retro ones because they've come out the last 10 years. They put out a couple of these retro ones, and all these games, and it's the original Atari games. It's not any of these others, Activision or anything. These are the Atari made Atari games that are programmed in them. And I think the one I have has like 108 different games in there. So they have the whole library of Atari games that you can flip through and play. I just have to plug it in and play it, and I'm kind of lazy to plug it on. If one day I'll have a cabinet where I can set this stuff up and I can just go over there and press the on button and play it, I won't have to actually go back and plug it all back in and then have to unplug it and put it back up. So, but yeah, it's pretty fun to go back and play to play these things. Yeah,
that's part of the fun is being able to.
And also, when I first got it, the controllers, it was the lines that plugged into the console. The controller was so small. I ended up having to go buy a wireless one because I've got such a big TV, my 65-inch TV, and I'm playing an Atari game, which looks funny anyway on a 65-inch TV instead of a small 70s, 80s TV. But you're playing that, but the wires aren't long enough, and you're sitting right up close to it. Yeah, it is very weird playing that on such a big TV. So,
yeah,
and it kind of skews some of the graphics when you do that. So it is kind of funny.
All right. Well, that's ranked. We got it up there. Obviously, yeah, like I said, number 1 for me, 1 for Michael, number 2 for John. That's all right. It's all good. What else we got?
Sorry.
What else do we have for Atari?
What?
We have anything else? John's obsessed with the Nintendo.
Nah.
No, I don't. No.
I mean, a pretty good little history for them. They started what we, consider now a $100 billion corp or industry, basically. So
yeah,
there's lots of things I would consider to say without Atari, there'd be a lot of jobs that wouldn't be out there, not only in that industry, but in just like different computer industries. It helped push a lot of those forward. So I'm very appreciative to Atari.
Yeah. Another little tidbit that I saw, the Atari logo, the A looking logo, the line, because it's made out of 3 different lines. The 2 sides curve up, and then you have the straight line in the middle. The straight line is like the net in Pong, and the 2 other lines that curve up next on each side of it are the 2 players from Pong, is what it was relayed in some notes that I saw. So,
Heard.
That's it.
Looks like 3 lines that make an A to me.
Yeah. That's what it looks like. I always thought it was like a little spaceship looking thing, like on the asteroid.
It makes more sense, like the asteroid spaceship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But the way they explain the 3 lines, how they got the 3 different lines, that's how it was explained.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of cool. I like it. All right. Well, with that, I think we can call this one a wrap. We talked a lot about Atari. Sorry, I figured it'd kind of be a longer episode. We talk more about games, but getting the history of the company. I think it's cool.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And how you thought it would be a great company, and then it just had failure after failure after failure, but it
kind of
still
nosedived. Yeah.
kept on chugging along, and it started the whole video game industry pretty much.
Like I say, I feel like they pushed the envelope a lot. It didn't always succeed, but they pushed the envelope. So be sure you check out us over at Cross the Streams Media with all of our, partner podcasts we have over there. There's quite a few of them. I'm not going to list all of them, but there's a few good ones. The Movie Gap and Front Row Negative, a couple of our good friends there. So be sure you give those a listen. And over at Cross Streams, you can also leave us a voicemail like we listened to Larry earlier. If you guys send us a voicemail, we'll be happy to play it on here and give us, maybe we'll start doing a retro thing where we talk about some of the episodes that we've talked about with your favorite toys. So be sure to do that. Check us out on all the social medias. Find us at Toy Rewind Podcast. Sorry, I blanked for a minute. I can't think of what we're doing. And so, and drop us a line. You drop us an email over at toyrewindpodcast@gmail.com or on any of those social media networks. So, I guess with that, on behalf of the Brothers Newland, thank you for listening to episode 110, where we talked about Atari. And
Thank you.
Play on. Hold on.
Ooh.
Got to find the exit.
You've been listening to the Toy Rewind Podcast. Follow and join in the conversations at toyrewindpodcast.com.